A very good evening to all of you and a very warm welcome to the NHRDN webinar on a very healthy topic, creating a psychologically healthy workforce. I am Sheetal Bansode, the Chapter Coordinator for National HRD Network Pune and your host for today's webinar. Like most of all other webinars, this one too is divided into two parts, learning session followed by a Q&A session. We would like to make the session as interactive as possible, so we invite you all to please share your questions or thoughts with us. You can do that at any time during the webinar using the question panel on the right-hand side of your GoToWebinar player. I now request our chapter president, Mr. Anand Khot, to take the session forward.
Thanks a lot, Sheetal. That was absolutely crisp and clear, as well as very quick as well. So welcome. My dear panelists, Aman sir, Sheetal ma'am, and 150 plus participants. Also, thank you in advance to Darpan, Sheetal and Avinash for making this webinar what it is today. Welcoming all of you on behalf of the core committee as well as the subcommittees, which you can see on your slide. I just want to take 2 to 3 minutes to call out the importance of today's topic of having psychologically healthy workforce. And I think in the current times of pandemic, this becomes eminently important in the organization. Otherwise, also in the modern society and in the knowledge economy, the stress levels for human beings are at very high as compared to the previous generations of economies we have seen with respect to industrial age and the agricultural age. In community and society, we still have not recognized this so-called invisible challenge, like the way Corona is an invisible challenge. The bigger invisible challenge actually has been with us in the recent past and will continue to be with us till such time we don't recognize, accept, and deal with it. And I think the psychologically healthy workforce is a happy workforce, and happy workforce is a productive workforce, and productive workforce is an engaged workforce. So if you try to look at the business imperatives of psychologically healthy workforce for all HR professionals as well as academicians on this call, I think it is extremely important. And we can even try and think of measuring the financial impact of psychological health of the workforce on the top line and bottom line of the organization, on things like customer satisfaction and various such things. But we have not paid much attention, and I think the time is right now to start paying attention on those. There are few organizations who have started doing happiness survey instead of doing engagement survey, and I feel that is a really good thing to do. Though it's not very easy to capture some of those emotions in the kind of systems we have available. But I think what we learn from today's session, and as we continue our engagement with Department of Psychology, Ferguson College, I'm sure we'll be able to come up with models which will start measuring happiness versus measuring engagement, and create a better and healthier workplaces for all of us. So with that kind of a backdrop, I'm very excited to listen in for next 1 hour to key questions coming from Aman and keeping Sheetal on her toes, in responding to those for our audience. It will not be a proper start if we don't introduce our panelists in the right manner. So if I can request Darpan to do the honors of introducing Sheetal Ruikar ma'am and Aman, and then we can take the session forward. Thank you.
Darpan. Thank you so much, sir. Yes, it is an utmost honor for me to introduce such esteemed personalities I have lately been in continuous touch with as a co-organizer of this webinar. I wanted to make it more interesting. I wanted to make their introduction sound more interesting. However, even the words that will be coming out from my mouth for next couple of minutes, if all the approximately 200 audience, which are to be specifically 180 audience right now. If they will hear every word of their achievement and every kind of impact that they have given on society, it is going to be more than enough, I guess. So let me start with the Vice President of National HRD Pune chapter, Shri Aman Rajabaliji. He has over 25 years of extensive and in-depth experience in human resource management and management consulting. He has worked with several organizations, including Ocean Agro India, Maxworth Orchards India in Baroda and Pune, respectively, whose HR departments he had set up and was heading. He was then frequently approached by top-tier organizations to provide his specialized consulting services in the fields of HR services, training, and executive search. Armed with this rich experience, ladies and gentlemen, in 1998, he had set up his own firm, Kabir Profile Solutions, which has been advising corporates on HR management functions, specializing in, but not restricted, still specializing in consulting, executive search, recruitment, and training, and what all and what not. His list of clients, I will rather save the precious time of our esteemed panelists by not going into the details of the list. But I would like to share this, that his list of clients includes several Fortune 500 companies from India, Bahrain, Dubai, Thailand, Africa, and the UK. From 1995, he has been corporate advisor to the Kabir Group, to Living Bridge, and to Law Beacons in strategic management, human resource management, and formulation of business plans. Aman sir has also been conducting sessions on personality assessment, interviews, group discussions, induction, career and skill enhancement, and coaching workshops for postgraduate students of several institutes. I'm losing on my breath here, Aman sir, but I still want to continue reading it. He has mentored and facilitated training for more than 1,950 professionals, ladies and gentlemen, in Pune, Mumbai, Ahmedabad, Aurangabad, Ahmednagar, Bhavnagar, and now, going worldwide, Brisbane in Australia as well. So in his 20 plus years of active involvement with the National HRD Network Pune, he has been its General Secretary and the Vice President, contributing vigorously to significantly improve its prominence and reach in the HR fraternity across India. Additionally, he is very active in HR and management associations like NIPM, ISTD, PMA, MCCIA, OHR, and QCFI Pune. I guess National HRD being home, you can always visit places. And then he completed his graduation in psychology, which is why he is here, sharing the screen with another person whom I will be coming on to very shortly. He had completed his graduation in psychology from Fergusson College. I envy everyone who has studied in Fergusson because I did not get a chance to. But still, his PG diploma in HR management from IMDR, and holds a master's degree in personnel management from IND Surge University of Pune. He holds a diploma in labor laws and business management. Whew, okay. Aman sir also happens to be a certified graphologist and a counselor. Ladies and gentlemen, presenting Mr. Aman Rajabaliji. Let me get on to Dr. Sheetal Ruikar. I call her pyar se Sheetal Tai because we also have another Sheetal in our organizing committee. So avoiding confusions, Sheetal Tai, or for the rest of the audience, Dr. Sheetal Ruikar, has a PhD in industrial and organizational psychology from SP Pune University and is working with Fergusson College as a faculty and as a MA coordinator in the Department of Psychology for last 11 years. Apart from teaching, her interest lies in research, having several research publications, and a book chapter is there to her credit. She was a part of research team that worked with Volkswagen on identifying futuristic trends in mobility. Before joining the academia, she was the unit head of Anugrah Rehabilitation Center, which is an institution in Pune dedicated to the rehabilitation of severely challenged children. She aspires to help create workplaces that are happy and empowering to people, flourishing as individuals. Ladies and gentlemen, Dr. Sheetal Ruikar for you all. Now, I know you must all be waiting eagerly to hear to these two esteemed personalities. We already have more than 200 attendees right now, and I do not want my life to get cursed in these WFH days if I'll take much of your time. So ladies and gentlemen, I hand it over to the moderator of session, Aman sir. Over to you, sir.
थैंक यू सो मच दर्पण। और तुम मुझे मिलो लॉकडाउन के बाद में कसम से गोली से उड़ा दूंगा। हाँ, मैंने यार इतना लंबा चौड़ा इंट्रोडक्शन दे दिया मेरा, बट थैंक यू सो मच एंड इट्स सच अ प्रिविलेज। थैंक यू आनंद।
Sorry to interrupt you, sir. लेकिन this was just the 1/4 of what I have for you.
अरे नहीं यार बट तुम्हारी जो बिग बॉस की तरह से जो आवाज आ रही है ना, वो बहुत अच्छा लगा। So thank you, and it is truly a privilege to be sharing the screen space with none other than Dr. Sheetal Ruikar, and of course because मेरा रिश्ता है psychology department के साथ, I am a proud Fergusonian, and more importantly the psychology department। तो बड़ा गर्व महसूस हो रहा है मुझे। So thank you so much for this, and yes, as Anand mentioned that well-being, psychological health is one of the most important, and considering the COVID-19 situation, this is going to be one of the major concerns across the globe, and one of the upcoming field. So it is desired and important that all of us do understand the nuances of creating a psychologically healthy workforce, and that's how we decided that. And we do have a relationship with Ferguson College. Apart from my connection, National HRD Network Pune chapter also has an official MOU with Deccan Education Society, and that's how we approached Dr. Ruikar, and she consented that she will share her knowledge with us, and that's how we designed this session. This is going to be more of a conversation between her and me, but initially she will start off with presenting her side of it, and may I now request Dr. Ruikar, please take over and let's go ahead with the session. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you so much, Aman sir, Anand sir, Darpan. Thanks for the introduction, and it's a pleasure to be here on this platform. So let me just share my presentation. Is it visible, Aman sir?
Yes, it is visible, and we need to. Do we take the poll first?
Yes, sir. Yeah, sure. So the topic for today's webinar, as we all know, is creating psychologically healthy workforce. So just as Aman sir said, before we move on to the first slide, we would like to have the audience poll about, we want to ask, do you really believe, or is it appropriate for organizations to invest in creating a psychologically healthy workplace? So what is your opinion? Yes, no, not sure. So kindly vote.
We wait for another 10 seconds.
Okay.
Ladies and gentlemen, request you to please vote as fast as possible so that we can continue. There is going to be a lot of interaction, and there are 2 more polls coming up in between the session. So we would want your inputs. 5, 4, gone. Very nice. Sheetal, Sheetal Bansode, could you please share the poll results? There.
Wow. Amazing. Amazing. So the majority of the audience today believe that yes, organizations should start thinking about psychology and psychologically healthy workplace. That's great.
Hmm.
Moving ahead, let's think about health. So WHO defines it in terms of a state of complete physical, mental, and social well-being, and not merely the absence of disease or infirmity. I think this statement is very comprehensive. And it's more important because they have not just included the physical part as health, which we generally think, but more importantly, mental and social aspect is there. And well-being is given importance rather than absence of disease. I think that's wonderful. So if you look at our organizations and workplaces, physical safety has been around for quite a long time. There have been a lot of legislations and many measures are in place for employees to feel safe, physically safe at their workplace. But when we think about the psychological health, I personally believe a lot more can be done. Though American Psychological Association, the apex body of psychology, has constituted awards for having psychologically healthy workplaces. So why this topic? I think as Aman sir and Anand sir have already talked about, yes, the pandemic. We have heard this word unprecedented, I think maybe a million times over this last few months. But sanitization, mask, social distancing, all of this has become the new normal. It was for the first time that people had to decide between survival and work productivity. They had to make a choice that while they are threatened for their survival, can they focus on their work? And yes, we did it. Yet, what came up in these few months was about the health. Yeah, today I think most of us do recognize, as our poll also saw, that 98% of the people here do believe that health and psychological health is important. But why should an organization think about this? Because there are intangible benefits. It increases trust, and more importantly, you will have tangible benefits in terms of you will save costs from absenteeism, attrition. Also, I think it will give rise to a brand value to the organization, which is very unique. Now, since it's an HRD platform that I'm addressing, so I have thought about how HR should play a role. But this knowledge about what I'm sharing on how to have a psychologically healthy workplace can be applicable to anybody, the line manager, or any person that who might be listening to this webinar. But coming back to the HR role, I think they really are doing a wonderful. They have been given a wonderful role to play. I would like to thank the NHRDN platform, especially Anand sir and Aman sir, for giving an organizational psychologist to have this conversation with the HR. Since the workforce today is very overwhelmed, and our HR can really make them positive. The line managers who are struggling can also be helped. The business leaders who are struggling to be afloat, you as an HR can really create value to that business. The society today is very vigilant. It is wanting to know what the corporate is doing with their people. This is an occasion to make a difference. As I truly believe, pandemic won't be there. Maybe after a year or so, there won't be a pandemic. But you will be remembered for what you did or what you did not do. I think before we go ahead, we can have another small poll wherein we will be asking y'all, how are you generally at the workplace?
Good idea. Yes, ma'am. Wow.
So, do you feel joyful? Are you disinterested? Are you anxious? Are you enthusiastic? Or are you stressed?
it is very unfortunate that as a panelist, I am not allowed to, give in my full answer. But it is very
Right.
interesting. Uh,
So Aman sir, if you had a choice, what would you take? If
how
I
am
can
I
ask
getting
you so.
now? Wow, joyful, no doubt about it.
Yeah, I was thinking, yeah, you would say joyful and enthusiastic.
Yeah. In fact, I'm liking this lockdown period. I've been enjoying over the last 3 months.
Oh, really,
I've been
sir?
productive. Yeah, been very productive, very
That's
effective,
nice.
connecting with people. So,
Right.
ladies and gentlemen, one request. There you go. Thank you so much. If
Yeah.
by chance you people have not been able to, tick mark, you please continue to write whatever you want to in the question box, and I will take it up. Thank you.
Yes, and I'm very happy to share with the audience that 55% of them believe that they are enthusiastic at workplace, 47% believe that they are joyful, while 27% believe they are stressed out, and 23 believe they are anxious. Only a small 7% believe that they are disinterested. Wow, I think we have a really positive audience here. Let's go ahead. Yeah.
You need to start screen share.
Yes. Did it, sir? Did it? My screen is visible, sir?
Yes, it is.
Right. So, yeah. So we just asked the audience how they generally feel, right? And we saw that the audience thought that yeah, they were positive, they were sometimes feeling enthusiastic, and there were some in them who were not. But when we talk about psychologically healthy workforce, how would it look like, right? So this list which I have curated, it is based on Fred Luthan's work on positive organizational behavior. It is also drawn from the two eminent humanistic psychologists, Abraham Maslow and Carl Rogers. So if you look at what we have put up on the slide, so in short, if I have to describe a psychologically healthy person, he would embody positivity, but at the same time, he will be able to manage his emotions effectively. He would go through life, which might be turbulent, depending on his internal psychological resources. And at the same time, he will look out for social resources. Um,
Yes,
Going
ma'am.
ahead,
Sorry. If you could elaborate more on social resources.
okay, fine. So
Thoda sa-
basically, when we talk about social, okay, yeah. So when we talk about social resources, these refer to the relationships that we have in our life. So psychological capital is basically who you are, and social resources would be whom you know. Okay, so who are in your network. So a psychologically healthy person will be self-reliant, and also he would depend on the environment and depend on people around him to, cope up with life. So it's not that a psychologically healthy person is like just wow. No, he needs people to support him. Right. Yeah.
So
Sir, should I go
he
ahead?
would be he would be more of a people's person, high on interpersonal skills.
Right?
Yeah.
He would show innate understanding of how to be with people. So it need not be that he need not be an extrovert. He may not enjoy people, but yet he knows how to deal with people. That's what we are saying. Yeah.
Okay. Ji,
Yeah.
ji. Please continue.
Right. So if this is what we want to attain, right? If this is the type of workforce we want with us, who are very flexible, adaptable, wanting to learn, are not fearful of challenges, then how should a HR be? That's what we are questioning here. What can the HR, like what skills the HR should have so that he can help out? Okay, so we are calling these elements psychological toolkit. That is, you can use this to empower people. You can use this to make your workforce psychologically healthy. So let's just see, what do you need or what is there in this toolkit? Okay, it seems to be a very small toolkit, right? Definitely for the presentation and for the webinar, it is just 3 points that we have put up on the slide, but it's an exhaustive list, and it could be like ability to communicate effectively, like, you know, nurturing relationships, all of that would be there. But let's focus on being empathetic, being compassionate, and help people find meaning in work. Why is it that I chose these 3 to discuss today? I think on the background of whatever is happening in the world today, if you think about the racist attack which happened in America, or you could think about the migrant situation, you could think about so many people being laid off. I think the HR today really needs to develop empathy, compassion, and he should help people find meaning in work. Yes.
एक सवाल पूछूं from the
हाँ,
HR
sir,
point of view. Yeah, you have put so many things on the plate of HR. You know, सब कुछ करना है. How is it that we are supposed to cope up with these things?
Very good question, Aman sir. Very good question. Right. See, that's the whole point. Like, I believe HR should first take a pause, right? And he should think. He should think about himself. He has to prioritize himself or herself, right? He has to understand how is his own energy level. How is his bandwidth? Will he be able to do this? Correct. Now, for you to be able to do this, the HR has to be very committed and focused, no doubt about it. But I would also speak to my HR friends here and just say, like, maybe think about why did you become an HR? I'm sure you became an HR because you wanted to help people work in a better way. You wanted to make the workplaces more happier, right? So I think if that's the purpose, then I think you will find that drive in you to adopt and implement this toolkit. Right? So let's go ahead.
Does
Yes,
that
sir.
does that mean that as HR professionals, we need to be psychologically healthier first?
Absolutely. That's absolutely correct, sir. Like, the change will begin with that person. So that's what the whole thing about this webinar. What we are telling is every person can implement these aspects in his or her life, and you spread it across where you go. That's the beauty of this toolkit. So the HR will have to really take time out for himself, herself, look at her own, like, you know, what we say in psychology, baggages, and then move ahead with helping others.
One more point, एक ख्याल आया कि when we are talking about the positive aspects of being a psychologically healthy individual,
yes,
is there a possibility that somebody might face any negative emotions?
Definitely, sir. Yeah. Good. Yeah, I need to clarify this. See, a psychologically healthy person does not mean he's immune or he will not have any negativity in him. He will experience anger, he will experience those other negative emotions. He will also struggle. But the important aspect is he will be able to bounce back faster. So he will be able to deal with it faster. Like, if I can give you an example, when you are falling sick, okay, so even healthy people fall sick, they also can catch a small virus, flu, but they are able to recover quickly. But somebody who is weaker in the first place, they will not be able to bounce back. right? So all this aspect about psychological health refers to your ability to manage your day-to-day challenges in a much healthier, better way, sir. Yeah, yeah,
You are more aware. Your ability to cope up is much higher.
right.
Yeah.
I would definitely say that. Yeah,
Okay. Ji, please continue.
yeah. So, being empathetic is something which I would first start with. So, we have always thought about empathy as walking in somebody's shoes. That's the way we speak about it normally. But Daniel Goleman, in his HBR guide for leadership and emotional intelligence, there he says that empathy cannot be so simple and straightforward. And he talks about three sides of empathy. The cognitive empathy, here it is the person, okay, he first needs to put his attention to the environment. He needs to seek out reasons of why people might be behaving the way they do, or more than behaving, feeling the way they do. So is it something different than what they usually are? So this is a cognitive a component to empathy. Yeah, so thinking about feelings. Then you have the emotional empathy. I think this is something which we all understand, or is very intuitive. Like, I feel while you feel. I mean, it's so soon. So I see somebody and I am able to judge that, oh, he is in pain or he is in distress. And those brain centers in my brain are triggered. And I simultaneously understand the pain is not within me, the pain is outside. So I'm seeking for cues, the facial expressions, the tone, or what is it that might be causing him distress. So therefore, you will, so it's a very complex brain functioning, I should say. Then the third thing, I think, which is very, I mean, we do not discuss it much, but it is the empathetic concern, right? This is something higher than feeling. So we don't leave empathy with the feeling, but there is a small decision which your brain takes. It decides whether you should reach out to this person. This is the attitude to help. Right. So in empathy, you can just feel and stop. But there are a few who also go a little beyond and they say that, oh, how can I help? Or it's a readiness to reach out, I would say. It's a readiness to reach out. And this empathetic concern, the brain center for it is very different from the emotional empathy brain center. And it is more on a different plane. So the thing that we are trying to tell here, and why am I discussing brain here, is simply because I want to just tell the audience that empathy, the word is really used, but it has to be hardwired. And when will something be hardwired? When you use it. When you use it and you use it right? Because empathy is actually also talking about adapting to the environment. You are connecting to your fellow being because you want to be safe also. You're getting it. So until we use it, it's not going to work very optimally. Okay, so
एक
now
मुझे
let's.
ख्याल आया.
Sir.
एक minute. I just remembered something because I am more I'm inclined towards films. There was a film which came up many years ago, which is an English film, To Kill a Mockingbird. This was written by
Yes,
Harper
yes,
Lee. Yeah? And
absolutely.
there was one. The entire film is based on empathy, majority of it. And
Yeah,
one of the sentence which he uses, he says that you never really understand a person until you consider things from his point of view.
absolutely.
So आप जब ये empathy के बारे में बात कर रहे थे, तो suddenly struck me and thought, let me share this with you. To Kill a Mockingbird.
Right.
The audience, if they have not seen this, I would suggest that please go and have a look at it. बढ़िया film है. Thank you.
Absolutely, absolutely. Wonderful
Yes, ma'am.
movie, sir. Right. Very, very, very correct. So now, how do you demonstrate empathy? So how would you call somebody empathetic? And I think listening is the biggest gift that you could give anybody. Okay, listening intently, listening with your heart and soul, right? So it's not like that usual thing. Okay, I generally see this, like two people would be talking and one person may be on the mobile. So the first one would ask like, okay, did you listen to what I say? What I just said? He said, yeah, I listened. And then he says, okay, tell me, what did I say? And word to word, the second person will say it back. Okay, now this is just hearing. This is just hearing. You have mechanically recorded somebody's voice and you're just giving it back. But when you talk about empathetic listening, you are being with that person in that moment. Yeah, you're being there, completely there with that person. And validating is basically respecting his feeling. You may agree to it, you may not agree to it, but you are there and you are completely there. Also, many times people are unable to verbalize what's happening to them because these emotional words are tough. I mean, how many of us know the difference between maybe joy, happiness, contentment? So these are different shades that you see. Yeah, unless you are trained, you have a vocabulary, you can't say what's happening to you. So many a times people say, "Arey, why didn't you come to me? I could have done something. Why couldn't you share with me?" But maybe he didn't have it. He didn't have the words. So therefore, you need this empathy part wherein you can just soak in what is there. So just like a sponge, wherever there's a water, he's soaking. So the soaking is what we would think about empathy. Yeah, and wanting to be over empathetic. Amin sir, you want to say something about over empathy?
That's what I was thinking. There is a possibility that one tends to, become more involved, or rather extra involved, wherein it has negative repercussions. And being in the consulting firm, and since I do have access to, quite a few organizations and people across, couple of instances I remember wherein this gentleman who was at a leadership position, very, very very professional, very nice person, and very effective. But his heart was very soft, like the sponge aapne jo kaha, to the extent that he got so involved with the people that it started hampering the productivity, it started hampering the organization, uh, because आगे गाड़ी बढ़ रही थी, and it impacted his health also, because all the time he kept thinking about problems of his people. Rather than focusing on solutions, he started focusing on the problems. और नहीं, आगे गाड़ी नहीं बढ़ रही थी, so much so that we had to actually get him into a counseling session for him to realize that there is a thin line and you don't have to cross that. So there is a possibility that we do tend to go overboard.
Exactly, right. So I think we need to have a balance between where you are constantly in that empathetic concern that you are unable to really help people, right? And also, while you are talking, Aman sir, something came to my mind that sometimes people just as they overdo, they don't do it also. So it becomes very lifeless. If you don't connect to people also, it's lifeless. But if you do it too much, it's also a problem. And there's one third category who try to fake it. So they just might just put up that face, that sad face, but whereas inside they are not touched. And I must tell these people something that a brain can understand that too. So the researchers show that your brain knows, okay, this is fake and this is genuine. That's the beauty. So though you might feel that, oh, you're doing a great job of putting on these emotions and that attitude, but no, it doesn't come. The genuine empathy you will know it. You really know it. Yeah.
True.
So let's move on. Being compassionate. Correct. So I think Dalai Lama is one of the spiritual leaders, and he's really, I mean, it's a holiness, Dalai Lama, and he has tried to bring compassion into science. Okay, so he has there is a lot of work wherein there is a collaboration between this whole Buddhist psychology with science, and they have a lot of experiments which are going on. And in simple words, what Dalai Lama is trying to tell us is positive disposition towards people that comes from being open. Okay, now this thing, it's like just be open. But how open? Open is like you are not judgmental. You don't approach somebody with a preconceived notion. You are not saying that, oh, his surname is this, so he is this. His designation is this, so he is this. So I will be like this. No, you just approach a child and you approach maybe a CEO in the same friendly disposition, right? It seems very simple, but when you are implementing it, that's the catch. Also, this compassion will come when you have knowledge about where people are coming from, correct? So what are their stories? Why is somebody so grumpy in the morning? Why is somebody not able to sit, late night at office? You need to know that story, correct? And many a times, if you have had that habit since like young adulthood, you would that compassion would come to you because you know why they are the way they are, and you stop being that judgmental person, right? Now, coming to Frost and Dutton, I think these are people who are doing tremendous work with compassion, and they have beautiful research papers. And they talk about compassion as having sub processes, and they say that it is relational. So when I say sub processes, it is basically like you would notice something. So when you say notice, it requires attention. It requires another set of abilities. Also, you're feeling it, and I think this is important, that is responding. So if you remember, like how a parent responds to the child, correct? It's completely unconditional. Huh? So if the need of the child, the moment it is arising, like, oh, it's hungry, the mother will just pick it up. Okay, this is the type of responding they are saying, and that is called as compassionate act. Okay, so it just reminds me these migrant stories which I read, and one was there was a group of migrant which was going from Bangalore to, I think, Uttar Pradesh, one village, and in one of these migrants, he while walking, okay, I think around 1,000 or 2,000 kilometers they were walking, and one of this migrant, his shoes tore, and the money they had on them was so little that they used to literally buy the small biscuit packets. Huh? A group of maybe 8 or 10 people walking together. And now imagine they're just buying a biscuit packet and eating it through the day, not spending more money because they know they need to go a long way. This man, his chappal was torn and he had to throw it off. And there were blisters on his feet. And he was surprised to find a pair of new shoes. They were very cheap, but still they were new. And it was gifted to him by his co-migrants. So these people had sacrificed that money which they had kept for their own food, and they had reached out to this migrant. So I think this is what is compassionate. It does not, like, it's not that you have money and so you do. It is not like that. It is you have, and in whatever you have, you are reaching out to others. Also, I would like to say compassion does not mean always giving things. No, compassion can come with a handshake. Compassion can come up with a pat on the back. Compassion can come by only a smile. Yeah. So you see, I know of so many masters, like, they will just smile at you and you are healed. Now, what's the power? The power is this compassion, okay, which they have for every individual on this earth, right? Sir, I just go ahead, huh?
जी. एक minute. In between, you mentioned about Mr. Frost, and you also mentioned about organizations being places of pain.
Yeah.
Organizing places of pain means what?
Okay. I think the interpretation of this could be that when people walk into our organizations, um, they come with so much. Like, I might have a mother who is suffering from cancer. I might have a child who's doing academically, not well. And with all of this, I come to my organization. So I am actually suffering. I am having this pain. And unfortunately, maybe I have a boss who is also not supportive. I have colleagues who are not cooperative. I might have like a situation like this, like the pandemic, where there is so much uncertainty and so much like threat to my life. So if you see organization, it brings together so many people who are at different levels of pain. So what we are saying is that means then the healing also should happen here, isn't it? If my hand is paining and it's hurting me, so I should take care of it. So similarly, organizations also should look at this pain that they are carrying so that they can truly make people happier, right? Rather than just superficially. Yeah.
Please.
Now, how do we be compassionate? How do you know that you're compassionate? Okay. Now, there is the psychologist Brené Brown, and she has spoken about selective vulnerability for leaders. So, what she's trying to tell us is that your emotions should not be on the sleeve. That means it's not like constantly you go around, but you are sharing a specific aspect of your weakness about yourself, but in a emotionally stable way. So it's like you are managing it and you are sharing it. So what happens is people who listen in this fashion, okay, that I'm able to talk about a setback which I had in my life 2 years back, okay, in a very calm manner, if I'm able to share it with my co-workers or my subordinates, the subordinate starts looking at me as human, right? They see that, oh, this person is, oh, he also went through something like I might have had some 10 years back. Okay, and your ability to share your vulnerability will create readiness in them to do it with you. Okay, so unless you create it, otherwise what happens, our dialogues are just very data sharing like thing. Our conversations are, it's not conversation, it is data sharing. Yeah, sir, you wanted to say?
I said inauthentic also. Very superficial.
Yeah. So how can you cultivate this compassion? So I would suggest that you need to listen to stories, you need to share stories, like as sir just said, like, okay, movies, documentaries. Unless you widen your experiences, it's very difficult to understand somebody. It's very difficult. You need, that's why, people travel, and I think travel is something very, very important to build your resources, your psychological resources generally also. Yeah.
No, I agree with the travel part of it. As an organization, if it is possible, as much as as HR professionals and depending on our policies and strategies, I think if we were to encourage employees to take time off, especially, and encourage them to travel, I think that will have not only an impact on the psychological health, social, emotional, family, everything, and of course, at the end, increase the productivity and have an impact on the bottom line.
Absolutely. What people do in leisure is very important. Okay, so how do they spend that time so that really builds oneself? So is it only malls that you're visiting, or is it only like very nature? Going back to nature really helps unwind and refresh, and it also gives you this sense of vastness. Like you look at a sea, ocean, and you feel, oh, it's such a big ocean, and I'm so small. Okay, that
Yeah.
feeling to come, I think, yeah, it's so wonderful that we can travel. And I think in this pandemic, I think most people miss that. They have been locked into homes, and April and May came, and they might have had wonderful vacation plans, and it has all gone off. And now unlock has started. You are back to your workplaces, and really, I think that's a sad part of this pandemic.
As organizations, as leaders, as HR professionals, we need to respect family time, and this is what it is. If I am
Right.
disturbed in my family or I have some issues, I will not be able to manage my work. So it is, consciously we need to design our strategies in such a way that there is a good amount of component of, travel time, family taken off. This will also
Yeah.
impact having, if there are any relationship issues, they can be resolved. You know? So divorce cases will come down, frustrations will come down.
Yeah, we can hope that it happens, surely.
Yeah.
Yeah. So now, yes. So we'll move on to finding meaning in work. Okay. Now, though this might seem a little, I think, vague, but I think this is a very important aspect because it gives a person a inner motivation. Yeah, this is a motivation which will drive people to work even many a times without rewards. Forget rewards, even when they are not getting their due. Okay, so during difficult circumstances like where we are now, still people, maybe their salaries are cut by 25%, 20%, 10%, still they have to go back to that work and work there. So what can help them to work? Would one aspect is this meaning, like why am I working? Okay, that can give them that inner compass, so to say, that I'll continue working till the situation becomes better and I am, I get my due. Now, in Sussex University, Bailey, I think that's right. So the Professor Bailey has conducted a wonderful research on 135 people, but it is a qualitative research that she conducted. And she tried to find out what gives meaning in work for people. And interestingly, what she found was there are different factors. There are two factors, just like the Herzberg's theory. For those who know Herzberg's theory of motivation, there are two factors. So one set of factors will improve meaning in work. Okay, and there are separate different factors which will decrease the meaning in work. So it is not like that if I have a set of factors to improve work, if that is not there, I will experience no meaning. It's not like that. It is basically my meaninglessness will increase or decrease. That's the continuum, two different continuums we are talking here. So meaning in work, it is a very personal and private experience. Second, meaning it's not very natural to get meaning in our work, okay, unless you really reflect on it. So let me just say, there is a sweeper who comes every day in front of my house and she sweeps the road and goes away. Every day she will come dot at that time and she really does a fabulous job of that. And one day I just happened to be there when she was doing it and I couldn't resist and I asked her, why do you do such fantastic job? I mean, what might be, why do you do it? So she just paused and she thought and she said, yeah, because if I keep this clean, people around here are going to be healthier. So somewhere so she just connected that her doing that act of cleaning every day as relating to the neighborhood being healthier. And then she said, I have to go and do it. So for you and me, it is a menial task. We might even, like, if you ask, like, I don't want to sweep my house, but this woman does it for the society, and that's the meaning that she's got. Yeah. Also, do we need positive experiences to create meaning in work? Like, in our workplaces, generally the trend is, create fun, get people together, make some fun games, and then they will be happier and then they'll work and they'll be engaged. But okay, the HR guys, I know, but let me just tell, many times and most of the times, it's the challenging situations that bring people to thinking about their work. Okay, so when, like, for example, the schools got shut and the teachers were then told to go, okay, make online, lectures and all of that, I'm sure so many of them might have struggled with the technology. They would have struggled with the technology. Yet you see that they are doing it. And one of the voice that comes, which you see in newspapers or social media, is like, we don't want the children to suffer. We don't want this year to go waste academically, and I will put in my effort. Right? So I think it needed like a situation like this for them to really think that, yeah, my work is important. I need to do it in spite of hardships. So yeah, so happiness may not always, push a person to think about meaning in work. That's the finding.
No, true. Yes.
Now,
Aman and Sheetal ma'am, if I can interrupt, there is a question and on the similar lines, and I think you shared examples about people who are connected to the purpose and positively connected with the purpose. One of the participant has asked question that sometimes either because of a situation or due to communication, like increment or promotion or performance, there are some people who go to the extreme stage of thinking or wanting to harm themselves. And
Mhm.
as a manager, what would be to the people manager of such people who show
Yes.
such tendencies? For those people, I think the purpose is bit far. Their own existential question, has been raised by themselves. And how do we? What would be your advice for handling such situations?
Yes, yes, yeah. Sir, brilliant, correct. I think that's the reality, right? We have, like, even Maslow talks about the basic needs being satisfied and the hierarchy of needs and all of that. But I think that incident, what this person is saying, that when you have this conversation with your junior and somebody, like, he's unhappy with the pay raise, and then he's so frustrated that he wants to, commit suicide or take something action like that. Now we need to understand that these are two different aspects of the same thing. People do not take these extreme steps only because of one thing in their life. So there is many a time there's a pile up that happens, and it doesn't happen just in that workplace. It might have happened right from their childhood. Correct. So there might be so many like so-called failures that he might have seen. He might look at the world as if they are not giving him his due. If the world is unfair, so this is what he is saying to himself. And whenever some incident comes, okay, in front of him, he quickly thinks that it is bad. Yeah, so I think it's like your brain is wired to have these irrational thoughts also, that nobody wants to give me my due, and that's what it predisposes you towards depression, negative emotions, and blaming, and all of that. So I would say psychological health would be a continuum, right? So at one extreme is this psychology health, what we are discussing, and the other is people who are really struggling, and they might even be pushing themselves into mental illness, right? So for our people's manager, I think he needs to be aware about what is it or where is it coming from. So for a person like this who is talking to, and you'll see there'll be see, behaviors don't come suddenly, okay? There will always be a pattern. The unfortunate thing is, only when somebody does very drastic some action, you then start looking in his past. उसने क्या किया, फिर उसने क्या किया, फिर उसने उसको कुछ बोला. But the point is that person has been carrying with him throughout. He has been carrying with him throughout. That wound is always there. So I would just suggest that maybe he needs a counselor if he's frequently like getting shots, like he's frequently being short tempered at work, he's feeling agitated, he's feeling aggressive, he's like constantly grumbling. I think he would be helped greatly with counseling, sir. Yeah, and I don't think our people managers are counselors, and they don't have that role also. So it is better for organizations to hire counselors so that this is taken care of. My manager will definitely have to listen so that he can red flag these people, and then maybe direct them towards help or mental health professionals. Aman sir, maybe you would want to say something which is something different perspective.
Absolutely, perfectly fine, apt. And I think I'm also looking at the time. We need
Okay.
to move on. Anand, if there is any other question you would want to ask?
There is one more, and it's coming from our own Shalaka Gundi, who was also there during L&D Summit. He's asking how to practice selective vulnerability. Shalaka,
Right,
thank you for asking
right.
that question. And if you can respond.
Yes. Sure. So, selective vulnerability comes through when in conversations or when you are with people, right? So, what we are trying to say is, you share some aspect of your wound or wound picture. You are sharing something about yourself, and you're sharing it in a very calm manner. Like if I have to give you some example, many of us get so emotional when we talk about a sad episode which has happened. Okay, and then what happens, you become emotionally leaky. That's what is another word, emotionally leaky. So leaky means what, wherever you go you will have something to say about it, because you haven't really addressed it yourself. So the ones who have addressed their wounds, okay, who have looked at their pain, their own sufferings, and who have tried, who have moved on. Okay, it's a process. It's a process. Those who have moved on then are able to, in a very calm or in a very reassuring way, they can talk about it. Like, you know, like 2 years back, I had this cancer episode, and I was like very shattered, and but today I'm really fine. Okay, now see the way I have said, and I could have also said in a very anxious way, you know what, there's this diagnosis, and I was so shocked, and I didn't know what to do. And if you're going this tone, then after a point people would not want to hear it, because it's creating distress in them. You're getting it? So you need to share something in a nice way so that people are not distressed. They can see what you have gone through, and that can also help them talk about it. I think I hope Shalaka ma'am is, if she has any, if she wants more clarification, I can go on. But since Anand sir?
I think you responded well there. So we can continue as per your and Aman's plan.
Okay.
I think the good sign is that there are many questions coming, and very deep questions as well.
Okay.
So we will need to make a note of these questions, and we share with you separately, and then you can help us respond to some of them through our
Okay.
YouTube channel.
Okay, fine, sir.
But
Okay,
let
so
us
then
see if we are in a position to make a note of all questions, because we may not be able to answer all of them, right here.
yeah.
I think on
Go ahead,
our YouTube channel we can write in the description box. Ma'am, please continue.
Right. So without yeah. So basically, as I said, that there are different factors which will decrease meaningfulness in work. Okay, they'll be like, for example, as a manager, you might find that certain employee values are not matching the organization values. Like if I have a strong need for aesthetics in my work, and somebody says that no, from the company viewpoint, we want numbers. I want you to get these many, graphics designed by the end of the day. You will do it initially because you want that work so badly, but over time you will see that, oh, what is this? I didn't choose this. I want to do my designs at my own pace. So this is discrepancy between values. I would like to say about recognition and acknowledgement. I think half of our problems at workplace would not remain if our bosses, line managers, or whoever they are able to acknowledge the work a person is doing sincerely. Now, pointless work to do. You see, even interns, okay, anybody who comes to work has a very strong notion about what his work should be like. He has already internalized it. Like if I am a teacher, I would have some notion about what teaching means. Now, if you give me work which is not core to this, my notion about teaching, over a period of time, I'll start wondering, why am I in this job? Yeah. So this pointless work would differ from different people. Okay, some would enjoy the administrative part, some would not really enjoy it. So that this is where you need to have this individual approach to employees. Now, every person feels that there is a way to do a job. Now, if my boss constantly tells me to take shortcuts, okay, so I might not agree to it from within, but I do it. But till if it goes on for a long time, I would really quit a job, because then I feel it's pointless being here, because what I have been taught like if I have to talk about my students, psychometry. Okay, so in organizations, lot of people want psychological tools, yeah, quickly. But the way we teach them in Ferguson College with such rigor, and you need to do item analysis, you have to first, standardize it, and then only you can use it. And so many students, after a point, they come, ma'am, we don't want to work as a psychometrician because what is expected of us and what we are taught, there is a gap, right? Finally, I think some trades, like for example, being a police, being a doctor, they know that they have chosen a risky situation because like there is some risk involved in it. But if people make them take more risk than what is required, they'll get frustrated and they'll stop working, right? For example, our doctors who are working in the COVID times, they may not have PPE kits. Suppose, imagine that situation. Maybe we don't want that situation, but if they don't have PPE kits, how long can they function? So they know that it's a healing profession and they've chosen it, and this is the time to give back to the society and all of that. But it will make them angry. It will, in their minds, they will say, this is unfair. I'm doing my duty, but you can't give me a PPE kit. So after a point of time, they start losing meaning in work, right? So this is it. I think now should we just have that poll, Aman sir, or let's just go to the conclusion?
Let's have a quick poll. This is the last poll that we will have, and yeah, please.
We'll conclude. Yeah.
There.
So which of these will adversely impact the psychological health of employees? Bullying, delay in getting information, flexibility in work timings, lack of resources. So what do you think? Okay, what would you rate highest in adversely affecting psychological health?
Ladies and gentlemen, a request, if we can be quick at this, we will be able to cover quite a few things. And believe me, from whatever you heard till now from Dr. Ruikar, she is a mine of knowledge in these aspects. So, उनका हम ज़्यादा से ज़्यादा वक्त इस्तेमाल कर सके अपने बेनिफिट के लिए तो फायदा होगा. शीतल बनसोड़े.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, can we now close the poll and see how many people have responded? What has been the response? Wow.
Okay, yeah, absolutely, yeah. So most of our audience believes bullying is the chief culprit, maybe, to adversely impact, followed by lack of resources, and then delay in getting information and flexibility in work timings. Yeah, true. But if you ask me, each one of it is going to adversely impact your psychological health. And I would just answer, mention the point which people have given least, flexibility in timings. So generally the impression is that flexibility is good, right? Flexibility is nice, but you should understand that sometimes flexibility can boomerang. So because you have given flexible work hours, there might be no boundary between life and work. So your schedules can change so often that after a point of time it becomes very difficult to handle for the employer and for the employee. So I think I will leave you all with this thought, and let's move on to conclusion.
एक मुझे पूछना था, आपने जब ये फ्लेक्सिबिलिटी के बारे में बात की, तो एज एन ऑर्गेनाइजेशन आई विल बी ओपन एंड आई विल गिव देम फ्लेक्सिबल वर्किंग आवर्स, आई विल गिव देम वर्क फ्रॉम होम, all the support, the resources, everything. Okay.
Yeah.
एक ख्याल ये आ रहा है कि what if our employees start taking the organization for granted and they take undue advantage of it, तब क्या होगा?
Yeah, sir, like that's what is the case. Like generally, I shouldn't say HR, but generally in the society, people really feel that, okay, if a person is not coming to the organization, is he really working? So in that small research which I did with the support of NHRDN, there were these responses where people said, oh, I'm at home and my family feels like I'm not working. Okay, because generally this person was not sitting in front of a laptop and doing work on laptop. The family wonders that, is this really work? you know, I mean, I was really shocked, like, okay, people can have these thoughts. Huh? So I would suggest that, yeah, you can give benefit of doubt to people, at least now, when they say that, yeah, it's difficult for them to work with flexibility. Maybe you can put certain boundaries. So you can say that, yeah, it's fine that you can work anytime between 9 to 4, or some boundary needs to be set, so that the employee also knows that that flexibility comes with some boundary. So it cannot be too loose that, you know, yeah. See, why am I saying this? Only because it is the employee is unable to handle the flexibility. Those who can handle the flexibility, no problem. But this customized flexibility, I think that's what we are recommending. Rather than just giving everybody the same way, you can definitely put, you know, certain
I
boundaries.
it also boils down to the culture that we have in the organization, and if it is
Yeah.
conducive, then I don't think so that by and large we all human beings are good at heart, and we will not take each other for granted. So अगर उस type का माहौल है, so then obviously employees will not
Yeah.
spread that.
I think I really agree with you, sir.
एक किस्सा याद आ रहा है
Absolutely.
मुझे. There's one organization, very large IT organization, and this was shared by a CHRO with me, and she mentioned that the work from home, when they had started off,
Hmm?
they devised a software wherein they were able to capture the mouse movements of employees, and hence they were able to come up with a report that you have not worked as much as you are required to do.
Oh.
Kind of, वो stuck हो गए थे अपने employees पे. That is the kind of
Yeah.
culture. And you know what happened? The counterpart of it is that employees then came up with a software
Huh.
which made the mouse move on its own.
Okay.
तो इसका
That's
उन्होंने
really, yeah. Human mind can work. Yeah. Right, right.
Let's conclude, and then we have questions.
Okay, sir. Yeah, so quickly, I would like to say that all this webinar was directed towards the HR and how he should be, so that he becomes an agent of change, and then the change comes to the workforce. But I think we are not at all propagating that it is only the HR role and profile who will have to do this. No, not at all. We need to include the business leaders. They need to support this cause. They need to believe that this is important. Also, we need to have processes and structures that would, you know, help this type of a workplace. And as Aman sir just correctly said, I think it all boils down to having culture, values that support the cause, right? Yes, so that's it from me. So we can maybe take questions, sir.
Anand.
Aman and Sheetal ma'am, we can do the non-commercial break now and then take questions. Because both of you have been speaking for last 1 hour, and I empathize with you. This is the time you can have sip of water or coffee or whatever it takes, and Sheetal and Darpan can take care of the non-commercial break. So all the participants don't go anywhere. I'm sure you have got your glass of water already with you, but let the panelists have one. Till then, Sheetal, you can go ahead with the things what you need to talk. I don't want to take away the surprise from the audience.
Yes, yes. Thank you, sir. Thank you so much. So, my dear audience, I would like to share the NHRDN upcoming webinar pipeline with you, starting from the evening of 5th of July, which is going to be a Shame Sukun for all of us, with an amazing sense of humor of Mr. Anand Daseri, followed by some soulful music of Dr. Salil Lati. Our NGO partners for this event are Swachh, Pragati Foundation, and iGive Live. We are going to go live on YouTube with the technical support of IC Outsourced. And my dear friends, we invite you all for this event along with your loved ones, so do not miss this one. The next in the line is our CSR webinar focusing on life beyond seizures, an empathetic peek into the life of a person with epilepsy. We are privileged to have a wonderful panel for this webinar, including Ms. Yashoda Wakankar, who is the founder and chief trustee of Samvedna Foundation. Next is Dr. Purnima Karandikar, who is a neurologist. Ketki Chitare, who is an actress, a motivational speaker, and an epilepsy warrior. And Ms. Leena Ranjan, who is the CSR Zonal Head of Urban Zone of in Bajaj Group, along with our NHRDN moderators, Mr. Suhas Pathak and Ms. Priya Kalatkar. The registration details for all these webinars are now available on our social media handles. You can also call or WhatsApp me on this number or write to me on nhrdpune@gmail.com and I will help you with the registration. Now, going forward, I now have a question for the audience. Did you all know that one life can save up to 8 lives? I want you all to think about this, and meanwhile, I'm going to share a small video with you all. Yes, so organ donation is the answer. I Give Life is an NGO working for organ donation. We request you all to please help us reach the maximum audience so that this noble cause can be shared with the community. We request you to invite us to your offices, webinars, conferences, or any such events to spread more awareness on I Give Life. You can reach out to us on the given number or email us on the given email ID for the same. Thank you, participants, and enjoy the rest of the webinars.
Ma'am, you are on mute.
Yeah, I just unmuted. Yeah.
Yes. So shall we start with further questions from the audience? Yeah. Anand?
Yes, we can. Darpan, you want to pick or you want me to pick? We can rotate the strike whichever ways. If you're already ready with some, go ahead. I'm ready with one.
Then you take the opening strike, sir. I'll be at the runner's end.
Okay, got it. Thank you for always being kind. So here, ma'am, one is from our own Sanjeev Dokte, and he's asking that organizations are trying to implement things like artificial intelligence and machine learning even in HR processes. Coincidentally, we did an HR analytics webinar yesterday only. So he's saying with all of those tools coming in place, where is the scope and space for empathy, or can both coexist? So if you can share your thoughts on that.
Yeah.
And the next question will come from Darpan.
Okay. I like wonderful. I mean, this is what I always think. Where are we headed with artificial intelligence and all? But I do not see that these are some like, you know, they can coexist and they will coexist, because analytics will give more time to people. Right. But I would also like, if you want to remain that empathetic and all of that in your organization, you want to have the life of the organization, you should also use qualitative research methodology, or you should talk to people and make words your data. So what happens is you would also, you can collaborate, like corroborate it with your quantitative research and research findings. So if you, for example, find that it is in the age group of 35 to 40 that most of the people, you know, who are having 10 years experience are leaving your organizations, that is what your HR analytics is going to give you. But why are they leaving? So you might have demographic data with you again, which you will regress and say that, yeah, it is like the marital status or number of children or whatever you might find. But until you speak, so exit interviews are very crucial. That's why, and why would people give you honest responses? Only if you're empathetic, sympathetic, empathetic, compassionate. You know, you have it in you to understand people. Yeah, so I would say organizations would run fabulously if we can bring both in. They are not opposite to each other, not at all. In fact, we should use the strength of each other to make the place a much better place.
That's
Thank
a
you so
very
much.
exciting answer. So I won't get the meeting by the analytics
No.
you know, speakers who yesterday spoke very strongly about using analytics in exit interviews. So Sanjeev, both coexist, two sides of the same coin, if I can say that. But
Yes.
wonderful response by you as well, ma'am. Darpan, go ahead.
Okay, thank you so much, ma'am, for the response. While I would want to put up one very important question, there is another question which has just popped up, which I am not able to relate at all with. I repeat, Aman sir, Anand sir, I am not able to relate with this question. Okay, the question has come from Mr. Shubhit Ranjan Dasgupta. He says, "How to handle a bad boss? Are there any options available?" And question which I wanted to put up is from Shrikant Thakur Desai. He's been a frequent audience for all our webinars. Are there any tools to measure psychological health of an individual in an company? And how do you bring it up from, say, level 4 to 8 if there is a scale from 1 to 10? So these are the two things which I wanted to put up.
I would like to answer the second question first. So definitely there are psychometric tools available. So the psychological capital that you have seen on the slide, Luthans has already created a tool and it is available on, I think, Mind Garden, and you can use it. Basically all these, like, you know, you, like, for example, Maslow's self-actualizers, okay, characteristic of self-actualizers, you can measure that. Already the tool is available. But again, I would like to suggest that let's create our own tools, because this is India and Indians. I am a strong believer that culture really impacts work and impacts people. So just borrowing a tool and measuring it, instead of that, let's create it. We have the resources and we should do it. Apart from that, about the bad boss thing, yeah. So yeah. So sometimes I think the employees also should just have more empathy and compassion and try and figure out, maybe he is having something more difficult in his life and that's why he is being like that. So compassion can't just be from the boss to the employee. It has to be both ways for it to really be what it is. Yeah. Yeah. It can't be one-sided.
No, and it is very easy for us to label people. Just because he does not gel with me or his thought processes are not aligned with me, I will label him as a bad boss or anything else. But what you say is absolutely true, that compassion needs to be. If he is a bad man, he wouldn't be in the organization.
Yeah, that's what I was going to come to, Aman sir. We need to really understand what this bad boss is. So we had put up a list of how managers can kill meaningfulness. So is he showing something like that? Then maybe we need to bring to his notice that this is what you're doing unintentionally, and that is what is creating an image of you being bad. So why don't you work on it? So it could also have, you can have corrective measures. Definitely.
Absolutely, yes. No, good question, in fact.
Yeah.
Bad boss waiting to be changed if the good employee, works on the skills which we learn today.
Yeah.
While that answer was most appropriate, ma'am, Shrikant ji has made a request that my question is partially answered in a brilliant way. However, I also had asked, how do we bring it, the scaling from level 4 to 8, if there is a scale from
Okay.
0?
Yeah, sorry, I forgot that part. Yeah, so if I have to again go back to psychological capital and using that tool, they have already come up with a web-based intervention. And they have promising results wherein they see, if I'm not wrong, 200% ROI. That's what they've measured. I think that's the beauty with all these Western, I admire America for that. They have wonderful researchers and organizations who allow researchers in to do this type of data research, so that they measured that, okay, you all were at this baseline, and after we did an intervention, you have risen to this baseline. And how did it affect the bottom line? How did it affect my productivity? And that's what they are really doing. So of course you can, yeah. So that's another thing. People are not fixed. Okay, so this thing about hero or the hope and all of that, it is not a trait. It's a there is a flexibility wherein people can change in a positive side, positive direction. Yeah. I think now I have answered completely, is it?
Yes, ma'am, sure.
Looks like, ma'am, and I think you're also gaining some fan following. There are a couple of people in the audience are also asking where can we follow ma'am on LinkedIn or on YouTube to know more about the tips around psychological, health and stuff like that. So, I think if you don't have the channel, we can lend you NHIDN Pune channel, and you can put up your small capsules there as well. So good to hear, and I think Kumar Guru has made that request. So Kumar Guru, thank you for acknowledging and appreciating what has been discussed here.
Yeah, and I was going to thank Anand sir and Aman sir. I think they gave me this chance because let me share, it's selective vulnerability. So my first post on LinkedIn is today, wherein I've shared that, okay, there is this webinar happening. I just thought that I don't think people wanted to hear this, and I thought like, yeah, like I'm okay. I'm teaching my kids, and I'm so happy being a passionate teacher that I didn't know, but I really thank NHRDN for the growth I'm seeing in myself. Thank you so much, sir.
So many avenues have opened up, no? We will seriously, I think, Anand, we should work on creating the YouTube series with Dr. Ruikar.
Indeed, why not? We always have 2 more projects in hand before we finish the first one, right? So that practice should continue.
That is true.
Excellent. Darpan, any more questions you want to ask, or from the time wise, are we doing okay?
We have
I think, yeah, we
we've
have
already overstepped the time.
If the audience is with us, then I think we can take the liberty of answering a few questions.
Sure, sir. As you said.
Audience is with us, and if both of you are okay, maybe Darpan, we can take 1 or 2 more.
Okay, sir. So there's a question coming from Dr. Jolly Sahni. Has COVID-19 negatively impacted our psychological well-being? What's the panel's take on this?
Yeah, of course. Yeah. Sorry. It just took me like, of course, there's no doubt that it has not, nobody would say it's not impacted. See, just imagine the situation that you are in that word lockdown itself can play on your mind. Evolutionary psychology says that when will a person keep himself locked in? When he is in a prison, or when he feels that outside there is a great threat to his survival. So if you have put people in this situation for 1 month, 2 months, or whatever time, definitely, see, that's what I would like to say. People are very resilient. So initially people will fight it back. They won't give it up. So that's where you see people going to work and trying to show productivity, and they feel like, wow, lockdown gave me this, lockdown gave me that. But if it is prolonged, then there are high chances that people will that there'll be a fatigue, there'll be a burnout, and like you wouldn't know how long this is going to be there now. So you need help. So what am I saying is, definitely psychological health is impacted. positively or negatively it is impacted. So you see growth also, which we say post-traumatic growth, but there would be some percentage of people who are really going downhill, and there we need to hold on, and that's why organizations become important, because so much percentage of our population go to their workplaces or connected to the workplaces. Yeah, so I think definitely we need help. We need more mental health professionals. Yeah.
That is why I
Aman sir,
think that is why I think the we have been talking about resilience, we're talking about well-being. These words have, and आपने जो बोला ना कि lockdown, it is a negative word. So is social distancing. I mean, it is physical distancing or is it social distancing? हम जिस प्रकार से terms को इस्तेमाल करते हैं, that also has an impact. So obviously it has, and this is the time wherein we have to look within and then come up of our, we have different coping mechanisms, and
Yeah.
that if it goes, if somebody has been impacted, goes into depression or is highly frustrated, there are avenues available. In counseling is one such
Yes.
theme that one could explore.
Right.
So I agree with you. And thank
Thank
you,
you,
Dr.
ma'am. Thank
Joshi,
you
for
so
asking
much.
this question.
That's it from our end, because we will be answering the rest of the questions for sure, as Aman sir said. So I hand it over to Anand sir, Aman sir, and Sheetal ma'am.
I think it will not be complete if we don't take this question. I just came across from Lavanya Samir, and I think a very important question. She's asking that sometimes and I think this is especially applicable for our female colleagues, that they take a few years of career break, because of the family reason and things like that. And when they are wanting to start back after that break of 4, 5, 3 years, depending on how much time they've taken, what are the psychological avenues and suggestions you would like to give it to them? Because most of them find it very difficult while coming back, and their psychological health at that juncture is not necessarily at its best. So if you can share some perspectives on coming out of things like this.
Absolutely. I think, I don't know where I read it, but I read it where it was said that women are basically into a like 100-meter race. So till they finish their education and all of that, they're full of ambition, drive, and all of that. And the minute maybe motherhood comes, I wouldn't say all. Of course, we have wonderful women who do that, who can go through it, but majority of them drop out. And for the organization, for the organization also, it's a big loss. There is another set of people who want to come back. So after, so to say, the mother, the child thing is settled and all of that, or they are like young, like not so young enough. Now, when she comes back, I think first of all, she is full of self-doubt. Like, am I competent enough? That's the first question. And she will always think that, oh, like so much has changed, and am I? So I think we need certain, as organization, maybe courses, training programs wherein she brushes up on her basic just to make her feel good. Okay. Another psychological help I think would be required is you give her a mentor. Give her somebody with whom she can share, with who can share the professional advice with this person. So one-to-one conversations can really boost this person. There is a lot of power in relationship, which I truly believe, and we should harness that mentoring thing. Third thing I would say, for the women themselves, they need to introspect again. Why are you back at the workplace? If it is to make a difference, if it is to give 100% productivity, you need to work on yourself. You will need time management. You will need to manage your home duties and the official commitments without asking for too much of leeway. So I think it's both ways, where the organization also gives a hand and the person also takes the responsibility and ownership of doing it for herself. Yeah.
Break our own mental barriers. For if I've taken a break for 4 years, my mindset has changed, and if I have to now get back into what I used to be 4 years ago, it's a quite a task. So here I need to be more prepared.
Yeah.
and with family
Absolutely.
support.
Right. And thank you both of you for that. And Lavanya, as well as there are many other HR professionals on the call, and I just want to share one or two experiences on these lines. So some organizations have something called as stay in touch kind of a policy, which means that while you are away on like a maternity or extended maternity, you are allowed to come and join things like all hands meetings or things like team meetings any time you want, and you are allowed to come with your spouse, with your child, so everybody experiences that whole process. The employee does not feel that she is totally disconnected from the work. And as you rightly mentioned, ma'am, there are return to work mentors, which means the mentor is actually staying in touch with the person, letting her know what all things have changed in last 6 months with respect to skills, with respect to org design, with respect to team projects, whatever it is. And so when the person is thinking about coming back, that person does not feel that a lot of it has changed when I'm coming back, because you were in touch. And as you can understand, overdoing can kill the cat. So you don't need to get into that personal space, because at that point in time, that employee also needs personal space. So this particular equation of return to work mentoring, that they to colleagues and feel that, gain that confidence back, that when I come back I have team to welcome me, I have stuff to do which I have left behind. And I think that way the return becomes much more meaningful and seamless as well. And I think as HR professionals, if we can introduce such policies, it will do wonders for our female colleagues. And the last point is that there are many organizations who have a specific dedicated recruitment drives for returning mothers, so to say. And when they are doing those dedicated drives, their process policies are slightly different than just hiring anybody from the marketplace. So they are more nimble in providing additional training. They are nimble in looking at part-time working. They are nimble in return to work in a gradual manner, all that kind of stuff. But obviously not every company follows that, but you can find out who are those so-called torch bearers of good practices and promote them so that more people adopt such initiatives.
Wonderful, Anand sir. You've really added to my also knowledge about all these aspects. I mean, the practical
Sure.
things which organizations are doing. Wonderful, wonderful to hear this.
Indeed. Thank you. So I think amazing session, and as always, we can't finish any discussion in one call, as they say. So 45 minutes of Zoom call is not sufficient. We have to multiple times, and this not restrict ourselves in 1 hour. I think it goes to all the ones who stayed through ask those wonderful questions, and really very insightful session. Thank you, Aman, for hosting this session in such a important topic, but you made it easy for the participants. Darpan and Sheetal Bansode, as always, amazing support, making sure that all of us are having smile on our face. I think credit goes to you. And Avinash for being our invisible host, us on all of these events. So team, have a great evening. Participants, have a great evening. Just a reminder, it's Friday. So in case if you get a weekend to relax and recuperate and gain more psychological health, this is your chance to do that. I'm definitely looking forward to one. And if you need a booster dose, then come and join us on the Shame Sukun, because that will act as a booster shot of psychological health. Thank you. Have a great evening.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you so much, everybody. Bye-bye. Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye. Good night.
Good night.
Good night.